Hey guys, tonight we begin with something darker. What if Earth was suddenly joined by a second moon, and instead of circling peacefully above us, it collided with our skies in ways that defy imagination? Picture the quiet stillness of night, then imagine a looming sphere entering the heavens, glowing faintly as it draws closer, until it becomes clear. Another moon is here. Scientists often remind us that Earth's delicate balance rests upon the gravitational pull of our single moon. It shapes tides, guides biological rhythms, and even helps stabilize our planet's tilt. But what if that balance was suddenly doubled, distorted, or shattered? Take a moment to let the image form. Above you, two bright moons pull at the seas. Their shadows overlap, their light intermingles, and in some nights they appear side by side like two eyes staring down from the cosmos. But beauty in this case would carry a price. A second moon would not simply be a neighbor. It would be a gravitational force pulling on Earth's oceans, crust, and atmosphere. And sooner or later, if its orbit was unstable, it would crash either into our first moon or into Earth itself. This is not simply an astronomical curiosity. This is a cosmic question that would change everything we know about life. Imagine ancient humans looking up at two moons. Would our myths, religions, and histories have been rewritten around dual celestial guardians? Would the rhythm of tides have nurtured different coastlines, different cradles of civilization? Perhaps agriculture, fishing, and even sleep cycles would have grown around this double light. Yet the reality of a sudden second moon is far more terrifying. Earth is not prepared for such a companion. The planet would strain under new tidal forces, earthquakes would ripple across continents, and volcanoes might awaken in fury. To make sense of this, we must step backward in time, all the way to Earth's violent beginnings. Our single moon itself is the product of a cataclysm, a Mars-sized body called Theia, striking Earth billions of years ago. From that unimaginable impact, molten rock was thrown into orbit, eventually coalescing into the moon we know today. Without that ancient collision, Earth's history could have looked very different. No stable tilt, no predictable seasons, perhaps no advanced life. So what happens when we imagine that story being repeated in modern times? Another body approaching, smashing, reshaping. This changes everything you know about Earth. A second moon would not politely slide into orbit. It would bring chaos. The energy released by its capture would be like countless nuclear weapons detonating in slow motion, felt not in seconds but in the bending of tides, the shifting of continents, and the trembling of Earth's core. Some scientists argue that even a smaller moon would destabilize our current lunar orbit. Others suggest that fragments would eventually rain down, burning through the atmosphere in a fiery cascade. The debate continues, but one thing remains. Earth with two moons is not Earth as we know it. It is a different world. So before you drift off, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. These stories only continue with your support, and every night we explore something that challenges our sense of reality. And if you are still awake, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is right now. It is always fascinating to see our global audience stretching across different time zones, all united under the same single moon, at least for now. I get to dim the lights, let the world outside fade away, and let us drift into tonight's journey together. Above you, picture not one moon, but two. One familiar, pale and steady, and another larger and darker, drawing ever closer. The ocean responds first, waves rising higher than you have ever seen. Beaches vanish. Cities along the coastlines tremble as water surges inland. Fishermen who once knew the tide by heart find themselves adrift in currents no map could predict. The moon's power over the seas is multiplied, but unpredictably, like two conductors leading one orchestra in chaos. And then the sky itself begins to change. Nights grow brighter, almost like twilight. Animals lose their ancient cues. Birds migrate in confusion. Turtles, who have followed the moon's light for millions of years, scatter. Even humans feel the shift, sleeping less, dreaming differently under a double gaze. Scientists would rush to calculate the orbit of the intruder, but by the time they finish their equations, the world might already be trembling. Two moons circling together rarely last long in cosmic history. Gravity is ruthless, and the dance of spheres ends almost always in collision. Here, the possibilities split. 1. The second moon smashes into our current moon, creating a storm of debris that rains down on Earth. Fire streaks across the skies for years, a new meteor shower every night, carving fresh scars into our continents. 2. The new moon is drawn into Earth itself. The collision would release unimaginable energy, enough to strip atmospheres and boil oceans. Even if humanity survived, the planet would never look the same. And 3, the rarest possibility that somehow both moons remain, suspended in a delicate gravitational embrace. But stability is temporary. Over centuries, tidal stresses would still tear apart coastlines and fracture the crust. Earth would be restless forever. As you drift deeper into this thought, remember that our universe is not short of strange arrangements. Other planets host multiple moons. Mars has 2 tiny companions. Jupiter and Saturn have dozens. Yet none of those worlds look like Earth. None carry our fragile balance of life, water, and atmosphere. That is why the single moon above us is not just a companion, it is a protector. It has been with us since life first crawled onto land, stabilizing, guiding, pulling. But in this alternate history, Earth is tested again. A second moon is not simply a visitor. It is a challenge to the very order of life itself. And that is where we begin tonight's story. With a sky that should be calm, suddenly doubled. With oceans that should be steady, suddenly wild. With a planet that should be stable, suddenly trembling. If a second moon ever arrived, Earth would never again be the same. To understand what it would mean for Earth to suddenly host a second moon, we first need to remember how we came to have the one we know. Our moon is not just a passive ornament hanging in the night sky. It is the product of violence, a cosmic scar forged from catastrophe billions of years ago. Scientists call the prevailing explanation the giant impact hypothesis, and it tells us that around 4.5 billion years ago, Earth collided with a Mars-sized protoplanet that researchers have named Theia. The crash was unimaginably destructive. Mountains melted, oceans of rock boiled, and massive plumes of molten material were flung into orbit. Out of that debris, our moon slowly took shape. In the early solar system, collisions were the rule rather than the exception. Planets were still gathering mass, competing for territory and smashing into one another in fiery battles that would decide their futures. For Earth, Theia's impact was decisive. Without it, Earth might never have had a large satellite. Our planet's tilt could have wobbled wildly, climate swings might have been too severe, and life as we know it might never have gained a foothold. The moon gave us more than just tides, it gave us stability, seasons, and the conditions that allowed complexity to emerge. Picture the young Earth in the aftermath of that colossal collision. Vast seas of magma stretched across its surface, and a glowing ring of molten rock encircled it. Slowly, over thousands of years, that ring began to clump together. Gravitational forces shaped it into a sphere, and as the fires cooled and the dust settled, the bright orb of the moon was born. Since then, it has been with us, orbiting at a distance that slowly increases every year, about 3.8 centimeters annually. That means in Earth's deep past, the moon was far closer, looming larger in the sky, pulling tides to greater extremes. Scientists still argue whether the moon was formed from Earth's mantle alone, from a mix of Earth and Theia, or from some entirely different process. Samples brought back from the Apollo missions show chemical similarities between lunar rocks and Earth's crust, strengthening the idea of a shared origin. Yet mysteries remain. Was it one impact or several smaller ones? Could the moon have formed in hours, Or did it take centuries of slow gathering? The debate continues, reminding us that even our closest celestial neighbor is not fully understood. But here is where the story turns toward our cosmic question. If Earth's single moon was born from an impact, what would happen if another body came along today, repeating history? The conditions are no longer the same. Earth is older, its crust is solid, its oceans full, its biosphere teeming with fragile life. A new collision would not create stability. It would not nurture balance. Instead, it would bring chaos. If Thayer's strike was creation, a second one now would be destruction. To make this vivid, imagine if Thayer had missed. Earth might never have had a moon. Without a moon to anchor our axial tilt, Earth could have wobbled between extremes. Sometimes it might tilt steeply, baking one hemisphere in endless sunlight while plunging the other into frozen night. Then it might swing the other way, sending climates lurching in patterns too chaotic for life to adapt. The moon prevents this, acting like a counterweight that steadies Earth's spin. A second moon, however, would not add to this balance. It would pull against it, straining the equilibrium, possibly sending our tilt into new and unpredictable rhythms. The moon also shapes time itself. Ancient calendars were built on its phases. Tides influenced by the moon's pull shaped coastlines where early life ventured onto land. Fishing cultures measured their survival by lunar cycles, and farmers watched the moon to track seasons. A second moon would double these signals, creating tides that no longer follow simple patterns. Waves would sometimes cancel each other, sometimes amplify, rising higher than modern cities could withstand. Entire human histories would have unfolded differently if two moons had shared the sky. But let us linger a moment on that ancient Earth with its newborn satellite. The night sky then was brighter, the moon larger. Volcanic plumes and meteor strikes painted the atmosphere red and orange, casting eerie light across molten seas. Early bacteria may have floated in those oceans, feeling the tug of tides far stronger than today's. Some researchers believe those tides created tidal pools where water could evaporate and concentrate the building blocks of life. DNA may have been born in the rhythm of the moon's pull. Without it, life might have stayed simple forever. And so the moon is not merely a bystander. It is a participant in our story, shaping everything from the first cells to the rise of civilizations. To ask what would happen if a second moon arrived is to ask whether Earth could survive a rewriting of its most fundamental conditions. Two moons might not mean double the beauty, but double the instability. The same force that once guided our evolution could, if repeated now, endanger it. There are myths, too, that whisper of multiple moons. Ancient cultures sometimes told stories of skies that once held more than one. In some Chinese legends, 10 suns once shone in the heavens until 9 were destroyed by a great archer. In Native American stories, there are tales of 2 moons fighting. These are not scientific evidence, but they reveal something about the human mind. We have always looked upward, imagining the sky crowded with more than one guiding light. Perhaps those myths reflect faint memories of astronomical events long forgotten, comets glowing brighter than stars, or meteors breaking the night with fiery trails. Or perhaps they are echoes of an older fear, that balance above can always be disturbed. Tonight, as you drift into this thought experiment, picture again the moment Thayer struck Earth. Fire lit up the skies. Oceans boiled away. The ground itself became liquid. From destruction came creation, from chaos came the moon. But if another Thayer came now, it would not be creation that followed, it would be collapse. And so the moon's birth story is not only a tale of beginnings, it is a warning. The cosmos is never finished with collisions, and balance is always temporary. From here, our story moves forward. Having seen the birth of the moon, we must now ask, what would happen if another were added? How would gravity respond? How would tides, climates, and life itself change? Let us explore the dance of forces that 2 moons would unleash. When people think of the moon, they often imagine only its soft light glowing across the night sky. But the moon is not just a lamp above us, it is a partner in a complex gravitational dance that influences nearly every system on Earth. With one moon, this dance is delicate but predictable. With two, the choreography becomes chaos. To truly understand what a second moon would mean, we need to examine gravity itself and how its constant pull shapes oceans, continents, and even our sense of time. The moon's gravity is most visible in the tides. Every day, as the moon circles Earth, its pull drags the oceans upward, creating high tides. On the opposite side of the globe, a secondary bulge appears because Earth itself is pulled slightly toward the moon, leaving water behind. This is why coastlines experience two high tides and two low tides in roughly 24 hours. With one moon, the rhythm is steady, a balance between Earth's rotation and lunar orbit. But add another moon into the mix, and those cycles become a tangle of competing forces. Picture this. One moon rises in the east, pulling the oceans toward it. At the same time, a second moon hangs in another part of the sky, tugging in a different direction. Sometimes their forces might align, creating extreme supertides that dwarf anything we know today. At other times, they would pull against one another, flattening the seas in unpredictable patterns. For coastal cities, the result would be devastating. Flooding would strike without warning. Harbors would vanish beneath water, only to be left stranded as tides receded farther than maps could follow. Navigation, trade, and daily life would all be disrupted by an ocean that no longer obeys the calendar. The effects would not stop at the shoreline. Tidal forces do more than move water, they flex the very crust of Earth. The moon's gravity pulls slightly on continents, causing tiny shifts. With two moons, this strain would intensify. Mountains might rise fractionally, only to sink again as the pull changed. Earthquakes could become more common, triggered by stress that no longer had time to settle. Volcanoes, already balanced on pressure from within, could find their caps blown open by the tug of two different lunar masters. Earth's crust would become restless, as if caught between two competing drummers, each beating to their own rhythm. And what of Earth's spin? Right now, the moon is gradually slowing our rotation. Billions of years ago, a day on Earth was only 6 hours long. Now, thanks to tidal friction, it is 24. With another moon, that deceleration would accelerate. Days could shorten or lengthen depending on how the orbits aligned. Our circadian rhythms, honed by the steady beat of 24 hours, would begin to drift. Plants would open their flowers too early or too late. Animals would lose track of when to hunt or migrate. Humans, too, would feel the strain. Sleep patterns, already fragile, would crumble under skies that shifted too quickly to follow. Scientists still argue whether a second moon could even hold a stable orbit. Some propose that one moon would eventually capture the other in a resonance, locking into a synchronized pattern. Others warn that such a balance would be temporary. Gravity does not tolerate rivals for long. Sooner or later, one moon would be pulled into Earth or flung away into space. During that time, however, the gravitational tug-of-war would leave Earth trembling. Even if the second moon survived for only centuries, the damage it caused could last forever. Consider the atmosphere. Tidal forces do not only pull on oceans and crust, they stretch the air itself. Winds are partly shaped by the subtle tug of the moon. With two moons, jet streams could shift violently. Storms might gain energy from the amplified tides, growing into super hurricanes that dwarf even our worst records. Dust from eruptions would combine with turbulent skies, dimming sunlight in some regions while burning others under relentless heat. Agriculture would falter as seasons lost their stability. The balance that has allowed human civilization to flourish would unravel. But it is not only destruction we should imagine. There is also the strange beauty of a world with two moons. Nights would be brighter, lit by shifting shadows from twin orbs. Eclipses would occur more frequently, sometimes involving both moons at once, casting Earth into eerie, layered darkness. Poets and dreamers might find inspiration in skies more complex than ours. Yet this beauty would be fleeting because gravity is relentless. Two moons, sharing one planet's pull, rarely last in harmony. One must eventually give way, and the path to that end is littered with chaos. Throughout history, people have looked to the heavens for order. The phases of our single moon gave us calendars, myths, and a sense of cosmic rhythm. With two moons, order would dissolve into confusion. Some nights would bring double crescents, others mismatched halves. A full moon might shine beside a sliver, tricking farmers and navigators alike. Rituals tied to lunar cycles would lose meaning. Humanity, which has always sought constancy in the sky, would find only instability. Even beyond Earth, the ripple effects would spread. The gravitational tug of two moons would alter the orbit of our planet itself. Tiny shifts could accumulate, changing our distance from the sun. Seasons might lengthen or shorten. Ice ages could be triggered prematurely, or deserts could spread as climates veered off course. A second moon would not merely change Earth, it could change the solar system, sending subtle waves of instability outward like ripples in a pond. As you drift deeper into this thought, imagine standing on a beach. The horizon stretches wide, the night air is still, and above you hang two glowing moons. Their reflections shimmer across the water, twisting together. At first, the sight is breathtaking. Then the waves begin to rise, not slowly, as in ordinary tides, but surging higher, pulled by two competing forces. The sand beneath your feet vanishes. The ocean swallows streets, forests, even mountains. What was once serene has become terrifying. This is gravity's new dance, and it does not care for human comfort. The truth is that Earth was lucky. We received one moon, born from catastrophe, yet gentle enough to become a guardian. Two moons would not have given us this gift. They would have pulled our world apart long before we had time to write histories, build cities, or wonder about the stars. Scientists still explore whether such a scenario is possible, running simulations of twin satellites circling Earth. Some show temporary harmony, others end in destruction. But all agree, two moons mean change, and change on a scale beyond imagination. In this alternate world, life itself would be rewritten. Evolution, guided by tides and rhythms, might have taken different paths. Perhaps no humans would exist to ask these questions. Perhaps only creatures adapted to chaos could thrive. As you let this thought settle, remember that our single moon is not ordinary. It is extraordinary. And it is only in its solitude that we have found stability. So the question remains, if one moon gave us life, what would two take away? That is the riddle of gravity's new dance. And it leads us to the next step of our journey, envisioning how the sky itself would look if two moons stared down upon us night after night. Close your eyes and imagine stepping out into the night. You look upward, and instead of a single pale moon, the sky holds two luminous giants. One is the familiar disk that humans have always known, glowing steady and silver. The other is new, a second orb, perhaps larger or darker, drifting beside it or across from it like a twin sibling. Their combined light transforms the heavens into something unfamiliar, something both awe-inspiring and unsettling. This is the sky with two moons, and it would change not only the look of our nights, but the very fabric of human experience. From the earliest days, humans have used the night sky as a guide. Stars marked the seasons, constellations told stories, and the moon provided rhythm to time. Its waxing and waning shaped calendars guided navigation and offered a dependable signal to ancient farmers. But with two moons, this rhythm would fracture. Imagine trying to track the cycles of not one but two lunar bodies, each with its own phases, alignments, and eclipses. Some nights might bring both moons full, casting shadows so sharp that night would feel like a strange extension of day. On other nights, one moon might wane while the other waxed, creating mismatched crescents that left the sky asymmetrical and eerie. The human imagination would not resist weaving stories around such sights. Myths might describe the moons as lovers chasing one another across the heavens, or as siblings locked in rivalry. Entire religions could form around the dual lights, with priests reading omens from the times when the moons aligned or eclipsed one another. Civilizations might mark time not in months, but in complex double cycles, where the overlapping phases of two moons created a calendar far more intricate than anything we know. Festivals could erupt during rare nights when both moons shone full, bathing the earth in doubled brilliance. But let us not forget the science beneath the wonder. Two moons would dramatically change the way light fell on Earth. Nights that are now dark enough to reveal the stars would be flooded with brightness. The Milky Way, once stretching across the sky like a river of fire, might fade under competing lunar light. Astronomy itself would be more difficult. Ancient stargazers might struggle to see constellations, their view washed out by the combined glow. Even today, modern observatories rely on the darkness of new moons to glimpse faint galaxies. With two moons, there would be fewer truly dark nights, shrinking humanity's window to peer into the distant universe. For animals, too, the night would change. Nocturnal creatures have evolved under the cycle of a single moon. Predators use its light to hunt, while prey rely on the safety of shadows. With two moons, shadows would overlap strangely, making nights brighter and more unpredictable. Some nights might never be dark at all, confusing owls, bats, and countless insects that depend on darkness. Sea turtles, which use the moon's glow to guide hatchlings to the ocean, would be thrown into chaos by the doubled light. Entire ecosystems could unravel, not from the violence of tidal forces, but from the subtle disorientation of too much lunar glow. Now picture an eclipse in this altered sky. When Earth passes between the Sun and the familiar moon, we see a lunar eclipse, a blood-red orb glowing dimly. But with two moons, eclipses could happen in pairs or sequences. One moon might slip into Earth's shadow while the other remained bright, creating a sky half darkened and half glowing. Or imagine a solar eclipse where not one but both moons attempted to cover the Sun. The chances of perfect alignment would be rare, but when it happened, the result would be breathtaking. The Sun blotted out by two disks, plunging Earth into an eerie twilight that felt like the end of days. There is also the matter of perspective. Depending on the size and distance of the second moon, it could appear larger than the one we know dominating the sky. If smaller, it might seem like a constant companion, always trailing the bigger moon like a younger sibling. Their movements would create shifting patterns in the heavens. Sometimes they would appear close together, a double lantern hanging low. Other times, they might oppose one another, one rising as the other set, giving Earth the strange gift of almost continuous moonlight. For ancient civilizations, this sky would have been overwhelming. The moon we know already inspired awe, shaping myths from Greece to Mesopotamia to the Americas. With two moons, mythologies might have grown even more elaborate. Perhaps wars would be fought over which moon was the true guardian of humanity. Priests might declare one moon benevolent and the other malevolent, weaving tales of cosmic balance. Rituals might demand offerings under one moon but not the other. The sky itself would become a theatre for human meaning, a canvas painted with dual lights. Yet there is another layer to consider. Beauty can mask danger. While the sight of two moons would inspire poetry, it would also serve as a warning. Their gravity, pulling in different directions, would already be reshaping tides, stirring storms and unsettling the earth beneath our feet. The very light that filled our skies would be the face of forces working to destabilize the planet. To gaze at two moons would be to witness the balance of nature tipping toward chaos. The beauty of the vision would always carry with it the dread of what those celestial bodies could do. Imagine standing in a forest at midnight. The leaves shimmer in silver, but not from one light. Shadows split in two directions, each cast by a different moon. Rivers gleam like liquid mirrors reflecting twin faces. Mountains stand outlined twice over, their ridges duplicated in overlapping bands of light. It would be disorienting, alien, as though the familiar Earth had shifted into a dreamlike state. Travelers might lose their sense of direction, unable to tell true north by the stars. Farmers might misjudge planting seasons when confronted with conflicting lunar cycles. Even the way we measure time would fracture. Weeks and months might not exist as we know them. The calendars of a two-moon Earth could have been bewildering, perhaps never stabilizing into reliable systems. Scientists today model such scenarios with powerful computers. Some simulations suggest that two moons might remain stable if their orbits were carefully aligned, perhaps with one smaller body trailing far behind the other. Others warn that instability is inevitable, with the moons eventually colliding or one crashing into Earth. Regardless, the sky in those centuries or millennia of dual moons would be unlike anything we can easily picture. It would not just be a spectacle, it would be a reminder of how fragile our balance really is. And so the sky with two moons is both wonder and omen. It is a vision of beauty that conceals destruction, of myth that hides danger, of light that blinds us to the chaos beneath. Humanity might gaze upward in awe, crafting stories and rituals, but below, the earth would already be trembling under the weight of two celestial masters. To see two moons is to realize that even the sky can betray us, offering not safety but uncertainty. As we continue our journey, we must now ask, what happens when these two moons, drawn by relentless gravity, meet not only in the sky but in space itself? The answer lies in collisions and catastrophe, the next chapter of this unfolding story. If two moons ever circled Earth, the beauty of their shared sky would be only a prelude. Gravity is patient but merciless, and in time, the two moons would find their paths crossing. What follows would not be harmony but destruction. Tonight, let us step into that possibility, the nightmare of lunar collisions, and the catastrophic aftermath that would echo across Earth. Imagine the orbits of two moons, each tugging not only on Earth, but on one another. Even if the second moon arrived in a stable path at first, subtle variations would accumulate. Every gravitational pull, every tidal shift, every wobble of Earth's axis would nudge their orbits. Over decades, centuries, or millennia, those nudges would add up. And one night, when humanity least expected it, the two moons might finally meet in the skies above. Their collision would be a cosmic event unlike anything modern humans have ever seen. We know from astronomical history that such collisions are far from rare. Moons have smashed into one another before. Saturn's rings, some scientists argue, may be the remnants of such disasters. Even in our own neighborhood, Mars's moon Phobos is doomed to either crash into the planet or be ripped apart into a new ring within tens of millions of years. Collisions are part of the natural cycle of the cosmos. But Earth has been shielded from such spectacles since the birth of our own moon. If a second were to arrive, that safety would vanish. Now picture the moment. The two moons draw closer, their surfaces scarred by craters, their orbits no longer perfectly aligned. At first, it may look like a near miss, one moon passing close by the other, their gravities pulling at each other's crusts. Mountains could crumble on their surfaces, dust plumes rising into space like silent explosions. Then the inevitable, their paths cross directly. A thunderous collision erupts in the heavens. There is no sound in space, but to those watching from Earth, the sight would be beyond comprehension. A flash brighter than any sunrise, shards of rock flung outward like glowing meteors, a cosmic fireworks display that lights the entire planet. What happens next depends on the size of the moons involved. If the second moon was smaller, it might shatter upon impact, scattering debris across the sky. These fragments would fall toward Earth, burning through the atmosphere as a rain of fire. For weeks, perhaps months, night skies would blaze with streaks of falling rock. Some pieces would be large enough to strike the ground, gouging new craters into continents and oceans. The damage would be global, from tsunamis racing across seas to firestorms igniting forests. Humanity would feel the consequences not as an abstract celestial event, but as a direct assault on every part of the biosphere. If the moons were of similar size, the collision could create an entirely new satellite. Out of the wreckage, gravity would gather fragments, pulling them into a fresh sphere. This is, after all, how our current moon was born. But the process would not be gentle. For thousands of years, fragments would circle Earth in chaotic orbits. Some would spiral inward, raining down as meteors. Others would drift outward, forming a temporary ring system that might encircle our planet like Saturn's. Imagine Earth with rings glittering above, a sight of surreal beauty. But beneath that beauty, devastation would continue, with each falling rock a reminder of the violence that created them. For life on Earth, the aftermath would be grim. Dust and debris launched into the atmosphere would blot out sunlight, plunging the world into a twilight haze. Photosynthesis would falter, crops would fail, and ecosystems would collapse. The oceans, already unsettled by shifting tides, would face further turmoil as impacts triggered tsunamis again and again. Volcanoes might awaken under the stress of gravitational shifts, adding ash to an already darkened sky. Humanity would be forced into survival mode, struggling to endure an environment that had turned hostile overnight. Scientists still argue about the exact details of such scenarios. Some models suggest that if the moons collided far from Earth, the debris might mostly escape into space, sparing the surface from the worst impacts. Others warn that even distant collisions would eventually send fragments our way, because gravity tends to draw broken pieces back to their source. The truth may lie somewhere between: a catastrophe that unfolds slowly, with Earth battered not in a single event, but in a long, relentless storm of falling fire. Either way, the message is clear. Two moons cannot coexist forever without risk. Beyond the immediate danger, consider the psychological impact. Humanity has always looked to the moon as a symbol of permanence. Poets, lovers, and dreamers across thousands of years have trusted its steady glow. To watch that steady light shatter in the sky would shake the human spirit. Religions might collapse or transform overnight. Prophets would declare the end of the world. Survivors might mark time not by days or months, but by before the moons collided and after the sky fell. Civilization itself could fracture under the weight of such a cosmic trauma. Let us also imagine the most extreme scenario. The collision does not just destroy the moons, but redirects one toward Earth. A smaller fragment might fall like an oversized asteroid, its impact enough to wipe out cities or continents. But if a large piece, hundreds of kilometers across, struck the surface, the result would be extinction level. Oceans would vaporize, skies would burn. Earth could even lose its atmosphere, stripped away by the force of the blow. Life as we know it would end, replaced by silence and smoldering rock. The collision of moons would not just be a spectacle, it would be a judgment. Yet even in destruction, the cosmos sometimes creates anew. Out of such chaos, a different Earth could emerge. Perhaps a new moon, larger and closer, would take its place in the sky. Perhaps rings would orbit Earth for millions of years, changing the way light fell on our nights. If humanity, or whatever life endured, looked upward, they would see a sky forever changed. Two moons colliding would not simply destroy the world we know. It would create a new chapter in planetary history, one written in fire and stone. From this vantage, we must remember that collisions are not rare exceptions, but the rule of the universe. Planets grow through impact, moons form from wreckage, rings shimmer where worlds have been torn apart. The cosmos builds by breaking. Earth, with its single calm moon, is the exception, a rare island of stability in a sea of violence. To imagine a second moon is to imagine the return of chaos, a reminder that peace in the heavens is always temporary. So as you let your mind drift into this vision, picture the moment when two moons finally meet. The sky flashes, fragments streak down, the world trembles. Beauty and terror merge into one. This is what it means to live under a double moon. It is a promise not of balance, but of inevitable catastrophe. And as the echoes of that vision fade, we turn to the next chapter of our journey. The oceans themselves. For if two moons strained the seas even before their collision, what would happen when their gravitational war broke the tides apart? The oceans are Earth's most responsive mirror to the pull of the moon. With one moon, their rise and fall follows a rhythm so steady that ancient fishermen could predict the tides without written calendars, and coastal civilizations thrived because of this predictability. But with two moons, the balance would fracture. The seas would not simply swell and retreat. They would become restless giants, lurching in conflicting directions, responding to a tug of war across the heavens. Tonight, let us dive into that nightmare, the shattered tides and broken oceans of a two-moon Earth. Imagine standing on a familiar shoreline. Waves lap at your feet in the way they always have. But then you notice something odd. The tide rises faster than expected, pulled strongly toward the horizon. As you retreat inland, the water follows, climbing higher and higher until streets vanish beneath its weight. Hours later, instead of a calm retreat, another surge arrives, this one from a different direction. The second moon has joined the pull, and the oceans no longer obey the old schedule. Coastlines everywhere would endure this chaos, a permanent state of unpredictability. Tides are not merely scenic, they shape entire ecosystems. Intertidal zones where the sea meets the land are nurseries for countless species. Crabs, mollusks, fish, and birds depend on the delicate timing of the tide. With two moons, those zones would flood and drain at erratic intervals. Eggs would be stranded in the open sun or drowned too soon. Migrating fish tuned to lunar cues would lose their signals. Sea turtles, which follow the moonlight to return to their nesting beaches, would scatter in confusion. The web of life woven around tidal regularity would unravel strand by strand. The destruction would not be ecological alone. Human life along coastlines would become impossible. Today, nearly 40% of humanity lives within 100 kilometers of the ocean. Cities like New York, Tokyo, London, and Mumbai rest on shorelines shaped by predictable tides. Two moons would sweep those foundations away. Sometimes tides would retreat so far that ships were left stranded in mudflats. Hours later, walls of water taller than skyscrapers could return, smashing harbors, bridges, and neighborhoods. Insurance would be meaningless, for no human system could protect against tides that refused to follow order. And then there is the physics of resonance. When two moons pull at the seas from different angles, they can amplify one another's effects. This is not a gentle addition, but a violent escalation. Supertides, higher than any in recorded history, would sweep across the world. Imagine a tide so powerful that it climbs hundreds of meters inland, carving new riverbeds and turning valleys into temporary seas. Farmers would lose fields overnight. Forests would drown. Entire islands would vanish. Coastal erosion, already a slow crisis in our world, would accelerate into an unstoppable force. Continents themselves would seem to shrink as the oceans consumed their edges. Some scientists argue that this might not only destroy coastlines but also destabilize ocean currents. The Gulf Stream, which carries warm water across the Atlantic, is sensitive to shifts in salinity and temperature. With unpredictable tides, Fresh water from rivers and melting ice would mix differently. Entire currents could collapse or redirect. Europe might freeze while Africa scorched. Monsoons might vanish from Asia or strike unpredictably. Humanity, already dependent on stable climate patterns, would face famine and migration on a scale far beyond anything in history. The chaos of broken tides would also echo deep beneath the surface. Tidal forces stir the oceans, mixing nutrients and oxygen. This mixing supports plankton, the foundation of the marine food chain. With irregular tides, those cycles could stall or overheat. Dead zones might spread, areas where no oxygen remains and nothing can live. The oceans could shift from vibrant cradles of life into vast deserts of water. Humanity would lose not just coastal safety, but the very source of much of its food supply. And consider the psychological impact of living in a world where the seas themselves are untrustworthy. Children would grow up with stories of tides that could swallow entire towns without warning. Fishermen would no longer dare sail, their traditions broken by forces beyond calculation. Tourists would vanish from beaches. Shorelines would become places of fear, watched with suspicion, abandoned to the wild pull of two lunar masters. The relationship between humanity and the sea, once filled with both reverence and dependence, would transform into a constant struggle for survival. Yet within the destruction, there would be surreal beauty. Nights when both moons were full would paint the oceans silver, waves shimmering like molten glass. Double reflections would stretch across the water, crisscrossing like twin highways of light. From high cliffs, people might gather to watch the strange ballet, marveling at the sight even as they feared the floods it foretold. Humanity has always been capable of finding wonder in disaster, and perhaps in this world, the broken oceans would become both curse and spectacle. Let us step deeper into this vision. Imagine a supertide sweeping inland toward a city. Skyscrapers gleam beneath moonlight as the water rises. Streets vanish, cars float, lights flicker. People rush to rooftops, staring upward at the two moons that caused their suffering. And as the waters recede, they leave behind not calmness but ruin, wreckage, disease, famine. Hours later, the cycle repeats. Life becomes impossible along the coasts, driving billions inland. Entire cultures that once depended on the sea, sailors, islanders, coastal traders, would be forced into exile. Humanity's map of habitation would shrink, pushing us toward the centers of continents. Scientists still argue whether such a scenario could be sustained. Some suggest that if two moons found a stable orbital resonance, their pulls might become predictable, even if more extreme. But others warn that no resonance lasts forever. Over time, instability would grow, and tides would break free from any pattern. The unpredictability is what makes this vision so terrifying. Humanity can adapt to difficulty, but it cannot adapt to chaos. Even inland rivers and lakes would not escape. Their flows are influenced by the rise and fall of seas. With tides fractured, river deltas would shift violently, flooding farmland and altering ecosystems. Lakes connected to the sea would swell unpredictably, creating floods far from coastlines. Groundwater tables would shift, undermining foundations. The very geography of Earth would tremble under the new order of water, and so the shattered tides are not just about waves. They are about a planet losing its rhythm. Life, from the smallest plankton to the greatest civilizations, has always depended on cycles it could trust. Two moons would destroy that trust. The oceans, once guides and providers, would become unpredictable destroyers. Earth itself would feel broken, its harmony replaced by endless struggle. As you drift into this thought, imagine once more the sound of waves, but not the gentle rhythm of a single moon's pull. Instead, hear the roar of two competing forces colliding in the heart of the ocean. The waters surge, crash, retreat, and surge again, each motion more violent than the last. The tides are no longer music. They are chaos incarnate. This is the ocean's rebellion under two moons, a rebellion humanity could never truly win. And if the seas are broken, what of the land itself? For tides do not stop at the shore. Their forces travel deep into the crust, straining the skin of Earth. With 2 moons, that strain would awaken volcanoes, unleashing fire from the depths. That is the path our journey now takes, to a world where lava joins the chaos of the tides. Beneath Earth's surface lies a restless engine. Magma churns in vast chambers, pressurized gases bubble upward, and tectonic plates glide and grind against one another. Normally, this hidden furnace is regulated by a balance of forces, erupting only when pressure exceeds the crust's strength. But when the gravitational pull of our single moon tugs at the crust, it adds subtle stress. Scientists have long observed how lunar cycles can slightly influence volcanic activity and earthquakes. With 2 moons, this delicate equilibrium would be shattered. The hidden fires of Earth would stir, and volcanoes across the globe would awaken in violent chorus. Picture Earth caught between 2 competing pulls. The crust flexes upward when one moon passes overhead, then downward as the other pulls from a different angle. This repeated stretching and compressing acts like a giant hand kneading the planet. Magma chambers swell and shrink. Fault lines tighten, then slip. Volcanic vents already under strain burst open in fiery eruptions. Lava fountains arc into the night, silhouetted against not 1 but 2 moons glaring down from the sky. What was once a world of scattered volcanoes becomes a planet under siege from its own mantle. Volcanoes are not just dramatic spectacles, they are engines of planetary change. The eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 darkened skies worldwide, triggering the year without a summer. Crops failed, famine spread, and societies trembled from a single event. Imagine hundreds of Tamboras erupting at once, their ash clouds overlapping, blotting out the sun for years. With 2 moons pulling relentlessly at Earth's crust, such mega eruptions could become normal. Humanity would find itself living under skies permanently dimmed, agriculture collapsing under shortened growing seasons, and temperatures plummeting in a volcanic winter. Consider Yellowstone, one of the most famous supervolcanoes. Today, scientists monitor it carefully, aware of its destructive potential. Under the strain of 2 moons, its massive magma chamber might destabilize, triggering an eruption so vast it would cover continents in ash. Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan, Iceland, all volcanic hotspots could erupt simultaneously, their fiery plumes feeding into a planetary veil. Air travel would halt, sunlight would dwindle, and rainfall patterns would change dramatically. The balance of Earth's climate, already fragile, would tilt into chaos. Scientists still argue how much lunar influence truly affects volcanic systems. Some claim the effect is minimal, drowned out by Earth's own internal forces. Others point to correlations between full moons and heightened seismic activity, suggesting that even small gravitational nudges can push a stressed system over the edge. With 2 moons, those nudges would not be small. They would be relentless. Each cycle would strain magma systems worldwide, ensuring that pressure built faster than it could be released safely. The planet would become a cauldron of fire, venting its fury through countless volcanoes. The destruction would not stop at ash and lava. Volcanic gases, especially sulfur dioxide, would fill the atmosphere. When combined with water vapor, these gases form reflective aerosols that block sunlight. Earth would cool rapidly. Crops already battered by broken tides would now face shorter growing seasons and frosts in the middle of summer. Famine would spread across continents. Entire nations might collapse, unable to feed their people. Humanity's dependence on predictable climate and agriculture would be exposed, and survival would become uncertain for billions. And yet, the paradox of volcanoes is that they create as well as destroy. Out of eruptions come new lands, fertile soils, and minerals vital to life. The very air we breathe was partly forged by volcanic release over billions of years. In this two-moon Earth, creation and destruction would collide. Islands might rise from the sea overnight, only to be swallowed by super tides. Fertile volcanic soils might emerge, but farmers would be unable to use them under ash-darkened skies. Life would find new niches even as old ones were obliterated. Now imagine the human experience of this fiery world. In one region, people flee as lava rivers carve through towns, glowing rivers visible even from orbit. In another, survivors live under a sky so filled with ash that the sun appears as a faint red disk. Crops fail year after year, and hunger becomes the global condition. The sight of two moons above would become an omen, symbols of the forces tearing the planet apart. Myths might describe the moons as jealous gods, pulling Earth's fiery heart to the surface in punishment. For those who endured, daily life would change entirely. Masks to filter ash would become essential. Water sources would need constant protection from contamination. Crops would shift toward hardy varieties capable of withstanding cold and limited sunlight. Humanity would shrink inward, relying on underground shelters or domed habitats. Civilization as we know it, dependent on stability, would collapse into scattered enclaves struggling against a planet in revolt. The geological scars of such an age would last millions of years. Layers of ash would blanket continents, forming strata that future scientists, if any survived, could read like pages in a book. Lava fields would cover vast areas, reshaping landscapes. Mountain ranges would grow overnight as tectonic activity accelerated. Earth itself would look like a younger, more violent version of its past, its quiet crust replaced by restless fire. Volcanoes would also affect the oceans. Ash and debris falling into seas would alter their chemistry, killing marine life and changing currents. Massive undersea eruptions triggered by lunar stress would boil water and release methane. Tsunamis, already amplified by chaotic tides, would become more frequent as undersea slopes collapsed. The boundary between fire and water would blur, with oceans steaming and lands burning in equal measure. It is worth remembering that volcanic winters have shaped human history even in our one-moon reality. The eruption of Krakatoa in 1883 produced sunsets so vivid that artists around the world captured them in paintings. Temperatures dropped and unusual weather patterns persisted for years. With two moons, such events would become constant, the rule rather than the exception. Earth's sky would rarely be blue. Instead, it would shimmer in strange hues, orange, red, and purple, from ash scattering sunlight. Nights would glow not only from two moons, but from volcanic lightning flashing in endless storms. Some scientists might argue that life would eventually adapt. Species have survived mass extinctions before, and ecosystems do recover. But adaptation takes millions of years, not centuries. Humanity does not have that time. Our survival depends on stability, on crops, clean air, and predictable weather. In a two-moon Earth, the awakening of volcanoes would rob us of all three. It would be a world where fire reigned, and survival meant enduring conditions humanity has never faced. As you drift deeper into this vision, picture the soundscape of such a world. Not the quiet hum of crickets at night, but the roar of eruptions echoing across valleys, the hiss of ash falling like snow, the rumble of the ground beneath your feet, restless and alive. Above, the two moons shine through veils of ash, their light distorted, their faces blurred by smoke. It would be a world both magnificent and terrifying, a reminder that Earth is never truly still. And so the awakening of volcanoes is not just about eruptions. It is about a planet torn open by forces beyond control. With two moons, Earth would be caught in a relentless cycle of fire and ash. Humanity's place here would be precarious, its survival uncertain. And yet, the story is not finished. For when the crust is stretched and cracked, not only volcanoes awaken, fault lines slip, tectonic plates grind harder, and earthquakes multiply. The next stage of this cosmic vision is a trembling Earth, shaking under the weight of two celestial masters. When most people think of the moon's influence on Earth, they picture tides sweeping across shorelines. Yet the moon's gravity does more than move water. It stretches the very skin of the planet. Today, with a single moon, these shifts are almost invisible. The crust flexes only slightly and we rarely notice. But with two moons, Earth's crust would be caught in a relentless tug of war. The results would be earthquakes multiplied beyond imagination, tremors rippling across continents in numbers so vast that millions would not feel like exaggeration. Tonight, we step into this trembling world where solid ground itself betrays us. Picture the crust as a thin shell floating atop molten rock. Beneath, magma churns, and tectonic plates ride along its currents. The stress at plate boundaries builds slowly, and earthquakes occur when that stress is finally released. Normally, this process is moderated by Earth's internal dynamics. But now imagine two moons pulling in opposite or shifting directions. The crust bends, stretches, and compresses unpredictably, adding new stresses to systems already on edge. Fault lines that might have held their tension for decades would rupture suddenly. Regions once considered stable would shatter. Earthquakes would no longer be isolated disasters. They would become a constant background of life. Consider the San Andreas Fault in California. Even in our single-moon reality, it produces quakes large enough to devastate cities. With two moons, the constant gravitational kneading would trigger it more frequently, perhaps daily. Tokyo, Istanbul, Mexico City, Santiago, metropolises built atop fault zones, would be in perpetual danger. Skyscrapers would sway, bridges would snap, and roads would buckle as quakes arrived not every few decades, but every few hours. Human engineering, no matter how advanced, could not adapt to a world where the ground never stopped moving, and it would not only be surface quakes. Deep focus earthquakes, those that originate hundreds of kilometers underground, would also increase. The added pressure from two moons would stir Earth's mantle, shifting subduction zones where one tectonic plate slides beneath another. Entire mountain ranges could rise faster, their growth punctuated by violent quakes. Coastal zones might collapse into the sea, triggering tsunamis even without volcanic eruptions. The very shape of continents would begin to shift more rapidly, as though Earth were returning to its early, unstable youth. For humanity, the devastation would be overwhelming. Cities would fall, rebuilt, and fall again. Historical architecture, temples, and monuments would vanish. Roads and railways would crumble faster than they could be repaired. Air travel would face constant disruption from damaged runways and control centers. Communication networks would collapse as fiber optic cables beneath oceans snapped again and again under shifting sea floors. Civilization, built on the assumption of stable ground, would find its foundations literally gone. Scientists still argue how much the moon truly influences seismic activity today. Some studies show correlations between full moons and slightly increased earthquake likelihood, while others dismiss the connection as coincidence. But all agree that tidal stresses do affect the crust, however subtly. With two moons, those stresses would be amplified beyond subtlety. They would be relentless, pressing and stretching fault lines until the world groaned under the weight. The debate would end not in academic journals, but in the rubble of cities. Imagine living in such a world. Sleep would be shattered by nightly tremors. Families would keep emergency packs beside their beds, not for rare events, but for daily survival. Schools would practice drills not yearly, but hourly. Children would learn to run from falling ceilings as naturally as they learn to read. Entire societies would develop in the shadow of earthquakes, their architecture temporary, their lives unstable. Survival would depend on constant vigilance, a never-ending dance with the trembling earth. The psychological impact would be immense. Humans trust the ground beneath their feet. It is our first sense of stability, the foundation of home, security, and civilization. To lose that trust would be to live in perpetual anxiety. Entire populations might migrate inland or onto floating platforms, seeking escape from crumbling coastlines and fault-ridden lands. But nowhere would truly be safe. Even supposedly quiet regions like Central Africa or northern Canada would experience quakes as lunar pulls stretched the crust evenly across the globe. Earthquakes would become universal, not confined to fault zones, but part of daily life for all. And with every quake, secondary disasters would follow. Landslides would bury valleys. Dams would collapse, unleashing walls of water. Nuclear plants, already vulnerable in our world, would face catastrophic meltdowns under constant shaking. Fires would rage through cities where gas lines ruptured again and again. The cost of rebuilding would exceed global resources. Governments might abandon attempts at permanent cities altogether, favoring nomadic or modular structures that could be replaced as quickly as they were lost. Civilization would be forced to reinvent itself, no longer rooted in stone but in mobility. Consider also the oceans. Submarine earthquakes, triggered by shifting plates, would unleash tsunamis far more often than today. Coastal populations would be decimated not by one great wave but by hundreds over a generation. Fishing economies would collapse. Ports would be abandoned. Trade routes would falter as ships risked destruction from sudden waves. Humanity's global networks would fragment, leaving societies isolated once more. In this fractured world, progress would slow and survival would dominate. As terrifying as this vision is, it is grounded in cosmic truth. Gravity shapes planets. Jupiter's moons, for example, experience intense tidal forces from their giant planet. Io, one of its moons, is racked by constant volcanic eruptions caused by gravitational stress. Earth, under the pull of two moons, would face a similar fate. Not just volcanoes, but endless quakes, a planet in constant motion. What we call solid ground would become an illusion. From a geological perspective, this chaos would leave unmistakable scars. Layers of shattered rock would fill the fossil record. Entire mountain ranges would bear the marks of sudden uplift. Valleys would show evidence of repeated collapses. Future scientists, if any remained, would read Earth's crust like a diary of disaster, each page recording another quake. It would be a history written in stone, but one so violent that few human witnesses could survive to tell the story. And yet, there is strange beauty in imagining Earth trembling beneath two moons. Night skies lit by dual orbs, while the ground shakes in endless rhythm, would remind us that our planet is alive, connected to the cosmos in ways we rarely notice. Earthquakes, terrifying though they are, would become the heartbeat of a world remade. Each tremor would be both a threat and a message that stability is an illusion and we are guests on a restless planet. As you let this image settle, picture yourself standing on a hill as the ground shakes. Houses crumble in the valley below, but above, the two moons shine undisturbed, serene in their orbit even as they destroy. It is a cruel contrast, beauty in the heavens, chaos on earth. This is the paradox of two moons, the gift of wonder, the curse of instability. And so, earthquakes in the millions would define this world. They would rewrite landscapes, end civilizations, and test humanity's endurance. But even this is not the end. For when ash and dust from quakes and volcanoes rise high enough, they can alter the atmosphere itself. The next stage of our journey leads us into a darker realm, the age of fire and ice, where the sky grows dim and Earth teeters between burning heat and frozen night. If earthquakes were the heartbeat of a world with two moons, then fire and ice would be its breath. Every quake, every volcanic eruption, every landslide would send particles skyward, filling the atmosphere with dust, ash, and gas. At the same time, the relentless gravitational tug of twin moons would not only stir Earth's crust, but also alter its weather. The result would be a planet caught in cycles of blazing heat and sudden chill, a world where seasons could shift unpredictably and the very sky might turn against us. Tonight, we step into this age of fire and ice, where survival is tested not just on the ground, but in the air we breathe. Imagine standing on a hillside after one of the great quakes. The ground is still trembling, but what captures your attention is the sky. Ash rises in columns from ruptured volcanoes, blotting out the stars. At first, the particles drift like smoke, but then the wind carries them higher, spreading them across continents. Soon, sunlight weakens. Days turn dim, the air thick and red with scattered light. Plants wilt, unable to photosynthesize. Temperatures fall sharply, not because winter has arrived, but because the sun itself is hidden behind a veil of ash. This is a volcanic winter, one triggered not by a single eruption but by a constant chain of them, driven by the pull of two moons. History gives us glimpses of what even a single volcanic winter can do. The eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 filled the atmosphere with so much ash that the following year was known as the Year Without a Summer. Crops failed across Europe and North America, famine spread, and social unrest followed. But that was just one eruption. Now imagine dozens, even hundreds of Tambora-sized events cascading one after another. The result would not be 1 year without summer, but generations living under dim skies. Fields would turn barren. Forests would shrink. Humanity would face hunger on a scale greater than any in history. But ash and ice are only part of the story. Alongside them, fire rages. Volcanic eruptions spew lava across landscapes, igniting forests and burying towns. Lightning storms fueled by ash clouds set dry grasslands ablaze. Earthquakes rupture gas lines and oil reserves, releasing firestorms that sweep through cities. For those who survive the quakes, flames become the next terror. Entire regions might burn continuously, their smoke adding yet more soot to the sky, amplifying the cooling effect. Civilization would be squeezed between two extremes, the blistering heat of local firestorms and the chilling frost of a dimmed planet. Scientists still argue how large an eruption must be to trigger a true nuclear winter effect, where sunlight is blocked for years. Some claim only supervolcanoes like Yellowstone could do it. Others point to smaller eruptions that still caused measurable global cooling. But under the influence of two moons, such debates would no longer be academic. The threshold would be crossed again and again until Earth's climate lurched into a chaotic rhythm. Heat and cold would arrive not as predictable seasons, but as violent swings catching humanity in between. Consider the oceans. As glaciers advance under colder skies, sea levels fall. Then, as heat returns with new volcanic eruptions or sudden atmospheric clearings, ice melts and waters surge back. Shorelines advance and retreat within a single human lifetime. Fishing communities are drowned, rebuilt, and drowned again. Saltwater intrudes into rivers, changing ecosystems. Coastal megacities would be abandoned, their ruins swallowed by tides. Entire populations would be forced inland, competing for shrinking fertile land. Wars over resources would become the new normal, not as a choice, but as a necessity. For animals and plants, survival would hinge on adaptability. Some species might thrive in the dim light, evolving quickly to make use of whatever scraps of sun filtered through the ash. Others would vanish entirely. Forests would be replaced by scrublands. Grasslands would give way to deserts. Ice would creep down from the poles, then retreat again in sudden melts. The planet would become a patchwork of extremes, with fiery deserts beside frozen tundras, each shifting unpredictably with the next cycle of volcanic eruption or atmospheric clearing. Humans, too, would adapt, though at great cost. Farming would collapse in traditional forms, replaced by underground greenhouses lit by artificial lamps. Energy sources would shift from solar to geothermal, tapping into the very heat of the earth that caused so much destruction. Nomadic lifestyles might return, with tribes and nations moving constantly in search of food and shelter. But even these strategies could not guarantee survival. Hunger would stalk humanity, shaping every decision, every invention, every culture. Civilizations might rise not around rivers or fertile plains, but around geothermal vents where warmth and food production could be sustained. And in the midst of this chaos, myths would grow. Ancient peoples once told stories of fire gods and ice demons, of floods and droughts sent by the heavens. In a world of two moons, such myths would find new life. The sight of dual orbs in the sky would become symbols of power, fear, and awe. Some cultures might worship them, offering sacrifices to quiet their wrath. Others might see them as curses, omens of doom that foretold the next quake or eruption. Over time, humanity's collective imagination would be reshaped by the relentless rhythm of fire and ice. Scientists would struggle to understand it all. Some would argue that two moons destabilize Earth's axial tilt, contributing to climate chaos. Others would point to the endless volcanic activity and its atmospheric impact. Still others would insist that hidden factors, perhaps cosmic radiation or solar cycles, were also at play. Debates would rage in laboratories and journals, but outside in the real world, the sky would remain dark, the ground hot or cold by turns. Knowledge would grow, but so would despair. Understanding why the world was unstable would not make it less so. For ordinary people, life would feel like living inside a dream of contradictions. One year, frost might kill crops. The next fires might sweep the same fields. Families would measure time not in decades or generations, but in cycles of eruption and quiet, ash and clear skies. A child might grow up never seeing a fully blue sky, only the pale, filtered glow of sunlight struggling through dust. A parent might tell bedtime stories not of far-off lands, but of times when Earth knew balance, when summer and winter came as expected. Hope would be a fragile currency, traded carefully in a world that seemed determined to break it. And yet, even in this grim vision, beauty persists. Ash sunsets glow blood red, painting the sky in colors no artist could replicate. Ice crystals catch faint sunlight, scattering it into halos and rainbows. Firestorms light forests with terrifying brilliance like living rivers of flame. The dual moons hang above it all, serene and cold, casting their silver light on a planet torn between extremes. It is a beauty born of chaos, a reminder that even destruction has its moments of wonder. So, the age of fire and ice would not simply be a geological period, it would be the backdrop of human existence under two moons. It would define our food, our shelter, our beliefs, and our survival. It would force us to adapt, to move, to reimagine life itself. The world would not end, but it would be remade, scarred, and transformed in ways we can scarcely imagine. And just when we think we have grasped the rhythm of fire and frost, another force waits beyond the horizon, the pull of the oceans themselves, rising and falling under twin tides, reshaping the coasts and testing humanity once more. Every vision so far has painted a world in chaos, shattered tides, volcanic winters, endless quakes. But chaos is not the end of humanity's story. The question that rises after every disaster is the same. Could we survive? What would it mean to endure when the very sky, seas, and ground have turned against us? Tonight, let us step into the harshest chapter yet, the struggle of survival in a ruined world, a planet reshaped by two moons into a place that barely resembles the Earth we once knew. Imagine waking in a city where the streets no longer follow their familiar paths. A super tide has swept away entire neighborhoods, leaving behind saltwater lakes where houses once stood. In the distance, a mountain smoulders, its slopes glowing red with new lava flows. The ground beneath your feet trembles often, not enough to knock you down every time, but enough that you never truly feel safe. Above all this, 2 moons glow in the night sky, symbols of beauty and destruction in equal measure. Survival in this place is no longer about comfort. It is about endurance. The first challenge would be food. Traditional agriculture, dependent on predictable seasons and reliable sunlight, would collapse under ash-filled skies and shifting climates. Fields would wither in volcanic winters or drown in super tides. Humanity would be forced underground, literally. Vast networks of hydroponic farms might emerge in caves, mines, or abandoned subway tunnels lit by artificial lamps powered by geothermal energy. Crops like potatoes, mushrooms, and algae, resilient and fast-growing, would become staples. Meat would become rare, reserved for those who could raise livestock in controlled shelters. Hunger, constant and gnawing, would be humanity's most faithful companion. Water, too, would shift from abundance to crisis. Coastal supplies would be ruined by saltwater intrusion as tides surged unpredictably. Inland, rivers would dry or flood without warning, their courses altered by quakes and landslides. Survivors would rely on filtration systems, harvesting rainwater when possible, though even rain might be acidic with volcanic gases. Communities would compete for aquifers, drilling ever deeper to reach untapped reserves. Wars would not be fought over ideology, but over access to clean water. Shelter would no longer mean a home in the traditional sense. Cities, crumbling under quakes and ash, would be abandoned. Survivors would seek higher ground, inland plateaus where tides could not reach. But even these sanctuaries would be temporary, as quakes and eruptions followed everywhere. Human ingenuity would turn to modular shelters, lightweight, portable, designed to be packed and moved quickly. Imagine dome-like habitats resistant to ash and fire, clustered like beads across safe zones. Communities would be nomadic, ready to abandon one area and rebuild in another at a moment's notice. Permanence, the foundation of civilization, would become a memory. Technology would both aid and fail humanity. On one hand, advanced filtration, artificial farming, and renewable energy would be essential. On the other, the global networks that support such technology would collapse. Satellites might be destroyed by debris from the moon's collision. Power grids would be crippled by constant seismic activity. Knowledge would still exist, but the means to use it would shrink. Survivors might salvage solar panels, batteries, or old machines, patching together what they could. Yet the dream of a connected global civilization would fade. Instead, humanity would fragment into isolated enclaves, each struggling to endure in its own way. Psychologically, survival would be as demanding as physically. Humans are creatures of stability, drawn to routines and cycles. But in a two-moon Earth, nothing would follow cycles anymore. Days could be dim for weeks, then suddenly scorching when ash cleared. Tides would surge without warning. Ground tremors would interrupt sleep. People would grow used to uncertainty, but the cost would be high: anxiety, despair, and a constant sense of living on the edge. Religion and mythology would flourish as people sought meaning in the chaos. Some might worship the two moons, offering rituals to calm them. Others might see them as curses, symbols of cosmic punishment. Faith, fear, and hope would intertwine in strange new ways. Scientists still argue whether humanity could truly survive an extinction-level event. Some believe that our adaptability, our ability to build, to plan, to cooperate, would save us. Others warn that ecological collapse would be too severe, that once food chains broke, recovery would be impossible. In a two-moon world, survival might depend less on technology than on community. Groups that worked together, sharing resources and protecting one another, would endure longer. Isolation, selfishness, or division would lead quickly to ruin. In this vision, the strongest were not those with weapons, but those with trust. Now imagine the generations that would grow up in this ruined earth. Children who never knew blue skies, who thought it normal for the ground to shake, the air to smell of ash, and the tides to roar unpredictably. For them, survival would not be a memory of a lost world, but the only world they knew. Stories of the old Earth with stable seasons and predictable nights would sound like myths. Perhaps such stories would inspire them, fueling dreams of restoring what was lost. Or perhaps they would see them as fairy tales, relics of an age too distant to matter. Over centuries, humans might evolve culturally and biologically to match the new Earth. Skin tones might adapt to dimmer light. Lungs might adjust to thinner, ash-filled air. Cultures would value resilience, adaptability, and mobility above all. Heroes would not be conquerors, but engineers, farmers, and waterfinders. Songs and art would reflect not beauty alone, but survival, resilience, and the haunting glow of two moons above every night. Yet, survival does not mean triumph. Even if humanity endured, it would be smaller, scattered, and humbled. Populations would plummet, cities would vanish, and global civilization would be reduced to enclaves. Earth would no longer feel like a planet designed for human comfort, but like an alien world we barely belonged to. In this sense, the second moon would remind us of a deeper truth, that life is fragile, temporary, and at the mercy of forces far beyond our control. And yet there would be moments of beauty. Survivors gathered around geothermal vents, sharing food grown in underground farms. Children laughing under the eerie light of twin moons. Communities singing to remember their ancestors, their voices echoing across ruined landscapes. Even in ruin, humanity would find ways to live, to hope, and to imagine a future. Perhaps one day, with time and adaptation, stability would return. Perhaps a new balance could be found. But in the immediate age of two moons, survival would be raw, painful, and uncertain. So, survival in a ruined world is not about triumph or rebuilding civilization as it was. It is about enduring through fire, ice, tides, and quakes. It is about clinging to one another when everything else is lost. Humanity might never again know the Earth it once had. But as long as even a few voices remain, as long as a few children grow under those twin moons, life would continue. And in that continuation, fragile as it is, lies the possibility of tomorrow. As we leave this vision of survival, our journey turns from the future to the past. For if two moons threaten to destroy us, perhaps they also shaped the myths and legends of our ancestors. Did ancient cultures remember a time when more than one moon lit the sky? Or were their stories glimpses of the same cosmic fears we imagine now? That is the question we face next as we step into the realm of legend. Long before telescopes or physics, humans gazed upward and shaped meaning from the night sky. The moon was more than a celestial body. It was a guide, a calendar, a storyteller, and a divine presence. Across cultures, myths arose about how the moon was born, what it meant, and what would happen if it changed. And curiously, many ancient traditions speak not of one moon, but of two. Tonight, let us wander into the realm of legend and myth, where stories of twin moons may reveal echoes of our deepest fears and imaginings. In ancient Mesopotamia, scribes recorded myths of gods who placed celestial bodies in the sky as symbols of order. Some texts hint at the idea of more than one moon, often tied to cosmic battles between deities. The moon god Sin was said to have rivals, forces of darkness who tried to steal his light. Was this merely metaphor, or a faint memory of skies imagined or even witnessed differently? Archaeologists debate, but the presence of other moons in early texts is undeniable. In China, folklore tells of Chang'e, the moon goddess who fled to the sky after drinking the elixir of immortality. Some variations of her myth describe multiple moons in the heavens, which brought unbearable heat until an archer shot down all but one. This story is often read as an allegory for balance between chaos and order. Yet in a world haunted by the idea of twin moons, the myth sounds eerily like cultural memory that more than one moon once threatened Earth, and survival demanded their destruction. The Inuit of the Arctic passed down oral stories of a time when two moons lit the night. One was bright and generous, the other dim and chaotic, casting strange shadows and stirring the tides more violently. For peoples living on fragile coasts, this tale may have reflected fear of the unpredictable sea. Scientists argue that such myths are metaphorical, but they reveal a common theme. Two moons represent danger, instability, and imbalance. Even Greek mythology offers a tantalizing thread. The poet Aristarchus wrote about a counter-Earth, a hidden celestial twin that balanced our planet on the other side of the sun. While not a moon exactly, it reveals how the ancients often imagined doubles, twin worlds, twin suns, twin moons, as central to cosmic order. Philosophers debated whether these doubles were real or symbolic. To the people, though, they were part of an ordered cosmos in which duality often foreshadowed catastrophe. But perhaps the most striking echoes come from the Americas. In Mayan cosmology, the hero twins journeyed into the underworld and transformed into celestial bodies after their trials. Scholars debate whether both became the sun and moon, or whether both became moons for a time before one faded. Among the Aztecs, myths speak of two beings who volunteered to become suns, but when both rose, their brightness scorched the earth, and one had to be diminished into the moon. Again, the motif is clear. Two great lights cannot coexist without destruction. Scientists still argue whether these legends are coincidence, metaphor, or faint memory. Could ancient humans have glimpsed a rogue celestial body passing close to Earth? Some fringe theories suggest early humans might have seen a captured object orbit for a time before breaking away. Mainstream science dismisses such claims, but the persistence of two moon myths across continents is striking. At the very least, they reflect humanity's intuitive sense that more than one moon would bring not harmony, but chaos. Imagine what it would be like for an ancient farmer to see a second orb in the sky, even briefly. Without the language of astronomy, how else could they explain it but through story?
A rival god, a curse, a second light that burns too brightly.
And when storms or earthquakes followed, as they often do in nature, the association would be sealed. Two moons mean disaster. Whether or not they ever truly saw such a thing, the fear itself became myth, handed down across generations. And myths, after all, are not just about the past. They shape identity, ritual, and survival. In a two-moon Earth, legends would likely take on renewed power. Imagine survivors in our ruined world, huddled around fires under twin moons. They would invent stories to explain why the heavens had betrayed them. Perhaps the moons would be seen as warring siblings, each dragging Earth in different directions. Or perhaps one would be deemed good and the other evil, and rituals would arise to appease them. Children would grow up believing their fate was written in the light of the moons above. The presence of two moons might even create entirely new calendars. Farmers and hunters in our one-moon world often tracked cycles of fertility, migration, and weather using lunar phases. With two moons, those cycles would clash, creating double calendars, double festivals, and double omens. A full moon of one might mean planting, while a full moon of the other might mean harvest. Some cultures might honor one moon and reject the other, dividing humanity not by geography but by allegiance to one celestial body over the other. Psychologists might argue that these myths reflect the human mind's search for order in chaos. When the sky presents a strange pattern, we build meaning into it. Two moons represent duality, life and death, light and darkness, creation and destruction. The persistence of this imagery across cultures speaks to something deep in the human imagination. Two moons are not a symbol of plenty. They are a symbol of imbalance, a warning that the world cannot hold two equal powers without breaking. And here lies the deeper irony. In our imagination tonight, Two moons literally do break the world. They shatter tides, awaken volcanoes, and shake the ground into endless earthquakes. The myths and legends of our ancestors, whether literal or metaphorical, align with the vision painted by science.
Two moons are not balance.
They are catastrophe dressed in silver light. Yet as myths often do, they also offer hope. The stories do not always end with destruction. The archer shoots down the extra moons, restoring order. The hero twins transform into celestial bodies, but their trials preserve life. The Aztec tale diminishes one into the moon, leaving balance restored. In every case, humanity endures, not unscathed but transformed. Myths remind us that survival is possible, even when the heavens seem determined to undo us. As you let these legends linger in your mind, picture the two moons glowing above ancient villages. Fires crackle, drums echo, and storytellers weave their tales. Children stare wide-eyed at the sky, half in awe, half in fear. Perhaps they never saw two moons, but they imagined them. And in that imagination they captured the truth, that Earth is fragile, that the heavens are powerful, and that survival often depends on balance. When that balance breaks, chaos follows. And now in our journey we leave myth behind to return to science, asking the question, could two moons truly exist at all? What does modern astrophysics say about the possibility of a rogue moon joining Earth's orbit?
Legends have given us powerful imagery of two moons, but myths alone cannot decide the truth.
To know whether Earth could ever truly gain a second moon, we must turn to science. Astrophysics, orbital mechanics, and celestial history all offer clues. Could a rogue object be captured by Earth's gravity? Could a massive impact send debris into orbit to form another companion? Or is the idea of a permanent second moon nothing more than fantasy? Tonight, we explore the science of possibility, and the answers are both sobering and strange. Let us begin with the basics. Earth's moon exists because of a colossal collision. Billions of years ago, a Mars-sized body, often called Theia, struck Earth. The impact hurled molten rock into space, and gravity gathered it into a single sphere. That sphere became our moon. The event was violent beyond imagination, but it gave us a companion that has shaped life ever since. From the length of our days to the rhythms of tides, the moon is part of Earth's identity. But if one impact could create a moon, could another event add a second? Theoretically, yes. If another massive collision hurled debris into orbit, Earth could capture fragments that might coalesce into a second moon. But this is not a stable scenario. Simulations show that two large moons orbiting the same planet would inevitably disrupt each other's paths. Over time, one would either crash into the other, fall into Earth, or escape into space. Stability is rare in celestial mechanics. For billions of years, Earth has hosted one moon because it is the only arrangement that truly lasts. There is also the question of capture. Could Earth snag a passing object like an asteroid and keep it as a second moon? The answer is technically yes, but only temporarily. Earth does occasionally capture small asteroids for short periods. Astronomers call these mini-moons. In 2006, one such object was discovered. 2006 RH-120, a rock only a few meters across, orbited Earth for about a year before drifting away. Others have likely done the same, unnoticed. These mini-moons prove that capture is possible, but they also reveal the difficulty of permanence. Gravity alone cannot hold them indefinitely. Sooner or later they escape or crash. Could a larger object be captured more securely? Scientists argue about this. Some say that with the right trajectory and speed, a substantial body might become a stable second moon. Others insist the gravitational interactions would always destabilize it. The presence of the sun complicates things further. Earth's gravitational pull is strong, but the sun's is far stronger. Any captured moonlet would be constantly tugged by solar gravity, adding instability. In short, a second moon could exist, but not for long on cosmic timescales, and yet nature provides examples of complex systems. Mars has two moons, Phobos and Deimos, though they are small and irregular. Jupiter and Saturn host dozens, each orbiting in intricate dances. Some moons even share orbits in so-called Trojan positions, leading and trailing each other. So why not Earth? The answer lies in scale. Gas giants can hold multiple moons because their gravity is immense. Earth's pull, though strong enough for one large moon, struggles to maintain order with two. Unless the second were tiny, like an asteroid, the system would quickly unravel. Scientists still argue about whether Earth might once have had two moons in its deep past. In 2011, a study proposed that our current moon could be the result of a slow-motion collision between two smaller moons. According to this theory, after Theia's impact, not one but two moons formed. For millions of years, they orbited Earth together until their paths crossed. The smaller body eventually slammed into the larger one, merging into the single moon we see today. If true, this means Earth did host two moons, briefly, and their collision left scars still visible in the crusty highlands of our current moon. The possibility excites scientists because it connects myth and geology. If Earth truly had two moons, even for a short time, could ancient life or early humans have seen them? The timescales make this unlikely, as the collision likely occurred billions of years before complex life evolved. But it reveals a deeper truth. Two moons are not impossible, just unstable. They appear, dance for a while, and then vanish, leaving behind myths, scars, or both. Now imagine a rogue planetesimal wandering through space today. It approaches Earth, slowed by just the right trajectory, captured by gravity. At first, astronomers marvel, a new moon, a second light in the sky. But soon calculations reveal the truth. Its orbit intersects with the path of our existing moon. Gravitational resonance builds, and in centuries, or perhaps mere decades, a collision becomes inevitable. Humanity would watch in awe and dread as the orbits spiral toward disaster. The beauty of two moons would be fleeting, a spectacle destined to end in catastrophe. Could humanity prevent such a fate? Some futurists speculate about using technology to adjust orbits, nudging moons into stability. Massive thrusters, gravitational tractors, or even asteroid redirection projects might offer tools. But the scale of energy required is beyond anything we currently possess. It would be like trying to move mountains with a candle flame. For now, the heavens remain outside our control. Still, the idea of two moons fascinates scientists because it forces us to think about balance. Celestial mechanics is a delicate dance, and even small changes ripple across the system. If Earth ever did gain a second moon, it would be temporary. But in that temporary span, the consequences would be profound. Tides, climates, geology, all would be reshaped. Humanity would not need billions of years to feel the difference. We would notice it immediately in floods, in quakes, in the sky itself. From a cosmic perspective, the rarity of stable two-moon systems around Earth-like planets may explain why life thrives here. Stability breeds opportunity. Our single moon has given us regular tides, a steady axial tilt, and predictable seasons. These conditions nurtured evolution. Two moons, by contrast, might have produced chaos, constant disasters preventing complex life from gaining a foothold. It may be that we owe our very existence to the fact that Earth has only one moon. As you reflect on this, imagine the night sky of possibility. Two moons gleam, one full, the other a crescent, chasing each other across the heavens. For a time, the world is mesmerized. Poets write of twin lights. Lovers marvel. Children stare upward in wonder. But scientists know the truth. The dance cannot last. One will fall, one will break, or both will merge. The sky of two moons is not a future. It is a fleeting dream, beautiful and deadly. So the science of possibility tells us this. Earth can gain a second moon, but not for long. Mini-moons come and go. Debris can gather temporarily,
Even a rogue body might circle us for a while.
But permanence is impossible. The cosmos allows two moons only as a story, a moment of spectacle, a prelude to collision. And in that fleeting vision lies both the wonder of myth and the inevitability of destruction. As we leave the realm of possibility, our journey takes a new turn. What if two moons had always been there, shaping Earth's history from the beginning? How might evolution, civilization, and culture have unfolded under dual lights? To answer that, we must dive into alternate Earth histories, where the world we know is but one of many paths. What if, from the very beginning, Earth had not one moon but two, instead of a single silver companion guiding the tides and stabilizing our axis? Imagine twin lights circling overhead for billions of years. How different would evolution have been? How different would civilization itself have unfolded under their glow? Tonight we open the door to alternate histories, peering into worlds that might have been where humanity's story is written not in the light of one moon, but two. The first and most immediate difference would be stability, or rather the lack of it. Earth's single moon plays a critical role in keeping our axial tilt steady. Without it, our planet would wobble like a spinning top, tilting chaotically over long time scales. Two moons, however, would not necessarily improve stability. Instead, they would create competing gravitational pulls, nudging Earth in conflicting directions. The result could be a planet where seasons swing more dramatically, where ice ages and scorching eras come more often, and where ecosystems are forced into constant adaptation. Evolution would still proceed, but the creatures that emerged might be far more resilient to extremes than anything alive today. Consider the earliest oceans. In our world, tides guided the mixing of nutrients, helping primitive life spread from shallow pools into deeper waters. With two moons, tides would have been stronger, more erratic, sometimes flooding coastlines for days, then retreating further than ever before. Life in this alternate history would evolve in an environment of constant flux. Perhaps early organisms would develop tougher shells, resistant to drying when tides abandoned them. Perhaps others would evolve faster mobility, learning to chase the shifting waters. The first multicellular life, instead of fragile, could have been hardened survivors, forged by chaos. By the time land animals emerged, the difference would be visible in their behavior. Reptiles and amphibians tied to cycles of water would adapt to harsher rhythms. They might breed more quickly or lay eggs in safer places far from tide zones. Mammals, later on, would likely evolve with heightened senses attuned to subtle changes in Earth's gravitational field. Two moons, constantly altering the weight of the world, would make sensitivity to such shifts a survival trait. Imagine herds of prehistoric animals that migrate not just by season, but by lunar alignment, moving inland when tides threaten or quakes stir. Civilization itself would grow under twin moons, with a sense of duality woven into its fabric. Agriculture, tied to lunar cycles, would not rely on a single calendar. Farmers would track two rhythms, planting by the full light of one moon and harvesting under the rise of the other. Rituals and religions would reflect this duality. One moon might be worshipped as benevolent, the other as dangerous. Priests would interpret their alignments as omens, prosperity when they appeared side by side, disaster when they opposed each other in the sky. Imagine ancient Egypt under two moons. The Nile already depended on predictable floods. With dual tides influencing the Mediterranean, floods could have been wilder, forcing new engineering and new myths. The Egyptians might have built temples to two moon gods, linking them with fertility and destruction. In Mesopotamia, the earliest calendars might have been lunar doubled, with months tracked in pairs, leading to more complex mathematics and astronomy far earlier than in our timeline. The very origin of science could have accelerated as humanity struggled to make sense of two competing lights in the sky. Mythology would certainly be transformed. In Greece, Artemis would not be the lone goddess of the moon, but part of a pair, perhaps two sisters, rivals or allies embodying harmony and conflict. In China, Chang'e might have shared her realm with another figure, creating tales of balance between immortals. In the Americas, twin moons could have merged with myths of dual suns, reinforcing stories of cosmic pairs. Human imagination thrives on symbols, and nothing would be more symbolic than two lights dividing the night sky. Navigation, too, would change. Mariners today rely on the single moon for tides and starlight for orientation. With two moons, navigation would be both easier and harder. The extra light would illuminate oceans more brightly, but the chaotic tides would make coastlines treacherous. Shipbuilding might advance earlier, with societies forced to adapt to unpredictable seas. Perhaps humanity would spread across the globe faster, or perhaps fear of the seas would slow expansion, leaving civilizations more isolated until technology overcame lunar chaos. Artists, poets and storytellers would never see the sky as empty. Every painting of a landscape, every poem of love would include two glowing orbs above. Lovers would pledge their affection under twin moons, warriors would march into battle inspired by their light, and rulers would claim divine authority from one or the other. Entire empires might rise under the banner of one moon, waging war against followers of the other. Dual moons would not just shape geology and biology, they would divide politics, faith, and identity. Yet there is a darker thread in this alternate history. Two moons cannot coexist indefinitely. Even if they began together, their orbits would eventually cross. Sooner or later, they would collide. Humanity in this alternate world would live with a constant awareness of this looming catastrophe. Myths might not only speak of their origins, but of their end, a prophecy of the day the moons would strike one another and shower Earth with fire. Imagine entire religions built around preparing for that day, offering sacrifices or building shelters in anticipation. Perhaps civilizations would rise and fall by how they interpreted the fate of the moons. Some scientists even speculate about what evolution would look like after such a collision. If two moons merged mid-history, the resulting chaos could reset Earth's climate, wiping out species and civilizations, forcing survivors to adapt to a new sky with one dominant moon. Our history might contain not just one extinction event like the asteroid that doomed the dinosaurs, but multiple resets, each triggered by lunar catastrophe. Humanity might still exist, but in vastly different forms, smaller, tougher, adapted to repeated cycles of ruin and rebirth. Scientists still argue about how plausible this alternate history is. Some suggest that Earth's current stability is so rare that any deviation would prevent complex life altogether. Others argue that life thrives in chaos, and two moons might have produced not fewer species but more, driving constant innovation. The truth may be unknowable, hidden in the possibilities of worlds that never were. But imagining them reveals how fragile our own history is. We exist not because chaos is impossible, but because we have been lucky enough to avoid it. As you let this vision unfold, picture an alternate night sky. Two moons, one larger and brighter, the other smaller, perhaps tinged with red from iron-rich dust. They rise together, casting twin shadows across forests where early humans huddle by firelight. Children point upward, asking their parents why the moons fight, why the seas roar louder when both are full. Parents answer with myths, with warnings, with hope. Civilization begins not beneath one light, but two, its destiny shaped by their ceaseless pull. And in this alternate Earth, perhaps humanity still dreams of the stars. Perhaps we still invent mathematics, telescopes and rockets, seeking to escape the chaos of two moons. But our myths, our history, and our very biology would all be different. We are the product of one moon, steady and patient. In another world, under two, we might be something else entirely. Harder, stranger, perhaps even unrecognizable. As we close this vision, we turn from what might have been to what still could be. Two moons are not just a dream of the past or an alternate history. They are also a potential future, a cosmic domino waiting to fall. If one rogue body entered our orbit, its fate would not only decide Earth's future, but perhaps the destiny of the entire solar system. That is the question we face next, the domino effect of two moons colliding and what it would mean for all the worlds around us. Up to this point, we have imagined Earth struggling under the pull of two moons, its seas torn, its crust broken, its skies darkened. But the cosmos is not a collection of isolated spheres. Every planet, every moon, every rock in space is connected by the invisible threads of gravity. If Earth were ever to gain a second moon, the consequences would ripple outward, shaking not just our planet, but the entire solar system. This is the cosmic domino effect, the idea that one change, one added moon, could alter the fate of worlds far beyond our own. Let us begin with the obvious. Two moons orbiting Earth would not just pull on our planet, they would pull on each other. Their orbits would shift unpredictably, sometimes aligning, sometimes colliding. Each tug would alter the center of mass around which Earth and its moons rotate, a point called the barycenter. Right now, with one moon, this barycenter lies just beneath Earth's surface. But with two moons, the balance would shift wildly.
Earth would wobble in its orbit like a drunken dancer.
And because Earth's path influences the balance of the solar system itself, even the smallest wobble would spread outward. Consider the tides of the atmosphere. Our planet's thin veil of air is influenced not only by the sun, but also by lunar gravity. With two moons, atmospheric tides would grow stronger, potentially altering jet streams and storm systems. Hurricanes might form in unusual places, cyclones might strike regions once safe, and rainfall patterns could collapse. This disruption would not only affect Earth, but could slightly shift how our planet reflects sunlight. That change in reflectivity, or albedo, would influence the thermal balance of the solar system itself, nudging neighboring planets ever so slightly. Scientists still argue about how sensitive the solar system is to small changes. Some simulations suggest that a tiny variation in Earth's orbit could, over millions of years, destabilize Mars or Venus. Others argue that the system is resilient, able to absorb small shifts without collapse. But history shows us that gravitational interactions can have dramatic effects. Jupiter's pull has redirected comets toward Earth countless times, some triggering mass extinctions. Saturn's moons constantly tug at its rings, shaping them into intricate patterns. Gravity's dominoes fall slowly, but when they fall, the results are profound. Now imagine the worst-case scenario. Earth's two moons collide, scattering debris into orbit. Some fragments rain down on Earth, but others are flung outward into space. A large enough fragment could enter a solar orbit, becoming a wandering asteroid that crosses the paths of other planets. Over centuries, it might strike Mars, leaving a fresh scar, or it might drift toward Venus, altering its already volatile atmosphere. Even tiny fragments could seed new meteor showers, pelting Earth and its neighbors with fire for generations. The destruction would not be confined to us. The whole inner solar system would feel the aftershocks. There is also the question of resonance. Planetary orbits are delicately tuned, like instruments in a cosmic symphony. Jupiter and Saturn, for example, have a resonance that helps stabilize the solar system. If Earth gained a second moon, the gravitational resonance of our system would change. Venus, which already has a complex relationship with Earth's orbit, might be nudged into a new rhythm. Mars could be pulled slightly inward or outward. Over millions of years, these nudges could accumulate, destabilizing orbits until collisions or ejections occurred. The solar system is more fragile than it appears, and a second moon could tip its balance. Consider the possibility of rings forming around Earth after a moon collision. At first, such rings would be spectacular, glowing arcs of rock and ice spanning the night sky. But those rings would not remain in place. Their debris would eventually spiral inward, burning up in our atmosphere, or outward, crossing into the paths of other planets. Imagine Saturn's graceful rings. but unruly and unstable, scattering fragments across the solar system. The beauty of rings would be short-lived, their legacy one of destruction. Humanity would not only face local disasters but also cosmic consequences. Astronomers would track fragments from the collision, watching as they altered asteroid belts or shifted comets from their paths. A comet redirected by Earth's second moon could become a world-ending projectile centuries later. This is the domino effect. What begins as a local instability spreads outward until the whole system vibrates with its consequences. And yet, some scientists argue that such chaos might also create opportunity. Collisions and ejections could deliver water-rich bodies to Mars, making it more hospitable. Or fragments could strike Europa, piercing its icy crust and releasing hidden oceans. Life elsewhere in the solar system could be seeded or revealed because of Earth's two moons. The destruction of one world might be the genesis of another's transformation. The cosmos, after all, is a place where endings and beginnings are woven tightly together. Imagine, for a moment, that Earth's two moons collided, and fragments formed a chain of new moons orbiting outward. Mars, watching from its dusty plains, would gain a brighter sky filled with meteors. Venus, wrapped in clouds, might see its storms worsen from new impacts. Even distant Jupiter, massive as it is, would feel the faint tug of redistributed gravity. The entire solar system would carry scars of the event, written across its planets and moons for billions of years to come. For humans, the knowledge of this interconnectedness would be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. No longer could we think of Earth as an isolated home, protected from the rest of space. Two moons would remind us daily that our fate is bound to the fate of the cosmos. Each night, looking at the sky, we would not only see beauty but also the fragile balance that holds everything together. Philosophers would write of destiny and chance. Scientists would calculate new trajectories, and children would dream not of safety but of survival in a universe that is always moving, always shifting. So the cosmic domino effect is not simply a scientific curiosity. It is a truth about existence itself. Every action in the cosmos has consequences, rippling outward across unimaginable distances and timescales. A second moon for Earth would not just alter tides or skies. It would whisper across the solar system, rearranging orbits, shifting fates, and perhaps even rewriting the story of life itself. As we leave this vision, imagine the final domino, humanity, looking up at two moons,
realizing that their presence means more than local chaos.
It means the cosmos itself is trembling, waiting for the next piece to fall. And as the dominoes continue, our journey turns outward to the search for other worlds that already live with multiple moons. What can they teach us? And could they hold the answers to our own two-moon nightmare? If Earth has only ever known the light of one moon, other worlds tell different stories. Across our solar system and beyond, moons are not exceptions. They are the rule. Gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn host entire families of them, dozens upon dozens of celestial companions orbiting in complex, mesmerizing dances. Even smaller planets like Mars manage to hold on to more than one. To imagine Earth with two moons, we need only look outward to planets where the reality of multiple moons already exists. What lessons do they hold? What warnings? And what possibilities do they offer as we continue our search among the stars? Begin with our red neighbor, Mars. Though tiny compared to Earth, it has two moons, Phobos and Deimos. Unlike our large round moon, they are small, irregularly shaped rocks, remnants of captured asteroids. Phobos, the larger, is doomed. It is slowly spiraling inward, and in millions of years, it will either crash into Mars or be torn apart into a ring. Deimos, by contrast, is drifting away, moving farther into space. Here, in miniature, we see the fate of a two-moon system, instability. One descends, the other escapes. Mars teaches us that two moons can coexist, but only temporarily, and their end is already written. Now turn to the gas giants. Jupiter, immense and powerful, boasts more than 90 moons.
Among them is Io, a tortured world of fire.
Gravitational tugs from Jupiter and its fellow moons stretch and compress Io constantly, fueling volcanic eruptions that dwarf anything on Earth. In contrast, Europa hides an ocean beneath its icy shell, kept liquid by the same gravitational kneading. Here lies a lesson. Multiple moons create not stability, but intensity. They stir one another, crack crusts, and fuel energy that can both destroy and nurture. On Earth, 2 moons might drive chaos. On Europa, that chaos may sustain life in hidden seas. Saturn, too, offers a vision of lunar abundance. Its moons dance in resonance, locked into rhythms that keep them from colliding. Titan, larger than Mercury, hosts rivers and lakes of methane. Enceladus sprays jets of water into space, hinting at oceans below. But even in their beauty, Saturn's moons remind us of fragility. Without Jupiter's stabilizing influence, many would likely drift or shatter. Saturn's rings themselves may be the remnants of a destroyed moon, proof that too many companions can lead to ruin. Rings, moons, fragments, the line between them is thin. Scientists still argue what defines a stable moon system. Some point to resonance, where moons orbit in ratios that prevent collisions, 2 moons for every 4 orbits of another, and so on. Others argue that true stability is an illusion and that every system is temporary. Our own solar system, with its swirling belts of asteroids and tilted orbits, is evidence of a violent past. The truth may be that all moons are survivors of chaos, and all will eventually be lost, collided, or flung into the void. Even our single moon is drifting away from Earth at a rate of 3.8 centimeters per year. One day, billions of years from now, it too will be gone, beyond our solar system. Telescopes are beginning to glimpse other worlds, and with them, the possibility of exomoons. These are moons orbiting planets far beyond the Sun, detected by subtle wobbles in starlight or shadows during planetary transits. Though none have been confirmed beyond doubt, the search is ongoing. If exomoons exist, and most astronomers believe they do, they might be common. Entire alien skies could shimmer with multiple moons, their light falling on oceans, deserts, or forests we cannot yet imagine. Some of those moons might even host life themselves, as large as planets, warmed by tidal forces or thick atmospheres. Imagine standing on the surface of an exoplanet with 2 or 3 moons above.
Nights would never be truly dark.
Shadows would shift and overlap. Seasons might stretch or shrink under complex gravitational pulls. Civilizations there would grow under skies far stranger than ours, their myths shaped not by one guiding light, but by many. For them, our single moon might seem lonely, a pale and fragile companion compared to their robust lunar families. Yet there is also danger. Too many moons create instability.
Orbits shift.
Collisions occur. The very conditions that allow for constant energy may also doom life before it can flourish. If life thrives on such worlds, it would need to adapt not only to shifting seas and quakes, but also to a sense of impermanence. Perhaps entire alien species live with the knowledge that their skies will one day break, that moons will fall, and that survival means preparing for inevitable collapse. For humanity, studying these systems is more than curiosity. It is a mirror. By seeing how moons shape other worlds, we understand how fragile our own arrangement is. Our single moon steadies our axis, gives us tides, and makes life as we know it possible. Without it, Earth might be a place of wild swings, less hospitable to complex life. With 2, as we have imagined tonight, Earth would tilt into chaos. Stability, it seems, is not guaranteed but gifted. And that gift may be rarer than we realize. As technology improves, we may one day see exomoons clearly. Space telescopes, vast and sensitive, could reveal their atmospheres, their surfaces, even hints of oceans. Entire catalogues of alien moons may be written, some barren, some vibrant. Perhaps one day, humanity will travel to them, setting foot on worlds where multiple moons cast overlapping shadows. The sky will be unfamiliar, but the lesson will be familiar. Moons shape worlds, and worlds shape life. Philosophically, the search for moons beyond Earth also forces us to reconsider our place. We are not unique, but we are unusual. Few planets host moons as large relative to themselves as ours. Fewer still perhaps maintain such long-term stability. If moons are common, but stability rare, then Earth may be an exceptional cradle for life. Our survival, our civilizations, our dreams, all may rest on the fragile fact that we have only one moon, and not two. As you let this thought settle, picture yourself gazing through a telescope at a distant star. Around it spins a planet, faintly visible, and orbiting that planet are two tiny lights. They may be lifeless, or they may cradle seas and winds of their own. Somewhere beneath their glow, creatures may look upward as we do, wondering what it means to live under twin lights. Perhaps their myths, their science, and their fears are not so different from ours. In seeking them, we see ourselves. And so searching the stars brings us both wonder and humility.
Moons are everywhere, shaping worlds in countless ways.
Yet here, on Earth, we live with only one, and in that uniqueness lies our fragile stability. As our journey nears its end, we must ask the final question. If Earth were ever truly given a second moon, would it mark the end of our story or the beginning of something stranger than we can imagine? From the beginning of this journey, we have imagined Earth reshaped by a second moon, its tides shattered, its crust split, its skies darkened, and its civilizations tested. We have wandered through myth and science, through alternate histories and cosmic dominoes. Now we arrive at the last question. If Earth truly had two moons, would it mean our destruction, or could it mark the beginning of something new and stranger than we can yet imagine? The truth is that two moons are not simply an addition. They are a transformation. Every system on Earth depends on balance, the tilt of our axis, the rhythm of our tides, the stability of our climate. Two moons would upset that balance, replacing stability with constant flux. For many, this would mean doom. Cities drowned by tides, crops withered under volcanic winters, populations shattered by endless quakes. Humanity might dwindle, reduced to scattered enclaves surviving on the edge of ruin. It would seem, at first glance, that two moons would be nothing but a death sentence. And yet, destruction is not the only story the cosmos tells.
Over and over we see that chaos is also creation.
Collisions form planets. Moons born of wreckage reshape worlds. Extinctions open niches for new life. If Earth were forced into the chaos of two moons, perhaps something unexpected could emerge. Humanity might adapt in ways unimaginable, living underground, farming in artificial caves, migrating with tides, harnessing geothermal energy. Or perhaps new species would rise, forged by extremes, thriving where humans could not. Life, after all, is stubborn. It endures not by avoiding change, but by embracing it. Imagine, centuries after the arrival of a second moon, a new form of civilization. Not the sprawling cities of our present, but compact communities hidden beneath mountains or clustered around volcanic vents for warmth. Their calendars would not count years as we do, but cycles of lunar alignment. Festivals would honor not stability, but survival, celebrating each generation that endured the moon's wrath. Technology would be tailored not for expansion, but for resilience. Shelters that could be rebuilt quickly, farms that could thrive in dim light, machines that could purify water poisoned by tides. The very definition of civilization would change, shaped by the reality of a world in flux. Scientists still argue about whether humanity could endure such extremes. Some say no, the collapse of food chains and ecosystems would doom us. Others say yes, that our ingenuity, our cooperation, our stubborn will to survive would see us through. Perhaps the answer lies not in certainty, but in possibility. Two moons would not guarantee extinction, nor would they guarantee survival. They would guarantee transformation. The Earth of two moons would not be the Earth we know, and the humanity that lived there would not be us, but something new. And what of meaning? Beyond science and survival, two moons would reshape how we see ourselves in the universe. The single moon we know today has been a constant companion for poets, dreamers, and lovers. It has guided sailors, inspired myths, and symbolized permanence. With two moons, that symbolism would change. Instead of constancy, the sky would represent duality, conflict, and impermanence. Philosophers would write of balance lost, of chaos embraced. Religions would frame the moons as deities, rivals, or lovers locked in eternal struggle. The human imagination, ever hungry for symbols, would find endless fuel in their shifting light. But perhaps the deepest change would be in our sense of time. Today we think of history as steady, linear, unfolding across stable centuries. With two moons, history would feel different, cyclical, unstable, broken by disasters and rebirths. Generations would measure time not in centuries of progress, but in intervals between catastrophes. And yet, within that cycle, a strange kind of meaning would emerge. That survival itself is victory, that to endure through chaos is to triumph. Two moons would teach us humility, but also resilience. As you picture this final vision, imagine standing on a quiet hillside centuries into this two-moon Earth. The ground beneath is scarred by quakes, the horizon broken by blackened volcanoes, the seas restless in the distance. But above, the sky holds two lights, one full and bright, the other smaller, fractured, its face scarred by ancient impacts. Children point upward, asking their elders for the story of the moons. The elders speak of destruction, of tides that drowned cities and skies that darkened for years. But they also speak of survival, of communities that endured, of inventions that saved lives, of hope that never died. For them, the two moons are not just omens of disaster. They are reminders of what it means to live in a fragile universe, to endure, to adapt, and to find meaning even in the chaos. So would two moons mark the end of us? Perhaps. Or perhaps they would mark the beginning of something stranger, a humanity remade by fire, water, and stone. The cosmos is not gentle. It does not promise stability. But it does promise possibility, and in that possibility lies the chance for new stories, new worlds, and new ways of being. Whether we would vanish or transform is uncertain. What is certain is that two moons would change everything we know about Earth and everything we know about ourselves. As you drift into sleep, let this final question linger in your mind. Look up at the night sky in your imagination. See two moons glowing side by side, casting their dual light across the Earth. Are they harbingers of doom or midwives of a new beginning? The answer is not written. It waits like the moons themselves in the endless, mysterious sky. As our journey draws to a close, let the twin moons fade from your mind's eye. We have wandered through shattered tides, quaking lands, volcanic fire, and frozen skies. We have walked among ancient myths, imagined alternate histories, and studied the science of possibility. And in every vision, one truth has remained. Earth is fragile, and the balance of the heavens is what keeps life steady. Two moons would shatter that balance. Yet even in the ruins of such a world, humanity's story is one of endurance, of survival, and of meaning. Take a moment now to let the imagery soften. Picture the night sky as you know it, with a single calm moon casting its silver glow. The seas return to their familiar rhythm, the ground rests steady, and the air is clear. This is the world we live in, the gift we often overlook. Stability is precious, and tonight we have been reminded how easily it could be broken. But here, in this quiet moment, you are safe. The disasters we imagined are only visions carried on the tide of thought. The two moons will not rise above your home tonight. Instead, there is still only one, steady and gentle, lighting the path of our ancestors and guiding us into the future. So breathe deeply. Let the chaos fade. Allow the soft rhythm of the earth, the tides, the seasons, the cycles of night and day, to ease you into rest. The sky is vast, the cosmos endless, but your place in it is simple, here, now, safe, drifting into sleep beneath a single moon.